That's a wrap for tonight. Good session, everybody. Man, I wish we could just keep playing forever. I don't actually have a secret that will let you keep playing forever, and it probably wouldn't be a great idea even if I did. But what is true is that you don't have to stop playing just because the session ended. Your best games can escape the table and develop in the most unexpected ways. Let's back up for a second. Actually, we're going to have to back up a long way. Way back in 1988, Aaron Alston's Strikeforce campaign for the Champions role-playing game was a revolutionary text, describing techniques for running and playing RPGs that transformed the games of those who read it. It was also, unfortunately, a fairly obscure text, and lots of GMs and designers have spent the past few decades reinventing Alston's wheel. One of the unique techniques that Alston describes in Strikeforce is Bluebooking, which is named after the semi-disposable notebooks used for exams. Bluebooking originally grew out of what Alston referred to as paranoia notes. That's when the GM passes a player a scrap of paper or vice versa, so that they can keep their communication secret from the other players. They're paranoia notes because that's what they create at the table. Now, rather than using scraps of paper, Alston's group would pass notepads around, and then something interesting happened. The players started passing the notepads to each other, using them to develop privately role-played side scenes while Alston's attention was elsewhere as a GM. They also started to use the pads for in-character journaling, developing character histories, in-character reflections on the events of the campaign, and more. The pads were then replaced with the little blue books, which allowed specific books to be dedicated to specific characters, interactions, and so forth. Eventually, whole game sessions were occasionally given over to Bluebooking. In these sessions, the players put their characters through solo activities or would write out conversations with each other. So, for example, you might have one player writing with the GM concerning his investigations, another conducting a romance with an NPC, and two others vacationing in Greece together. Alston identified 3 specific advantages to Bluebooking. First, privacy, for obvious reasons. Second, permanence, because the exam books provided an organized record of what had happened in the campaign. And third, a breakdown of inhibition. The last of these was particularly interesting. What Alston found was that it was hard to conduct some game activities during active play. For instance, a male game master playing a female NPC who's having a passionate affair with a male PC may have a hard time uttering the lines of high romance in a room full of gamers. But while Bluebooking the dialogue, the GM can be detached enough to write the NPC's lines as he wishes her to say them, can take the time to make sure the dialogue he's writing isn't clumsy or inane, and can give the player character a more satisfying subplot. To Alston's list, I think we can also add exploring the unusual, by allowing you to play through moments and topics that you can't or won't explore at the table. Much like there can be stuff that the group may find uncomfortable, there can also be stuff that people in the group aren't interested in, or which would be too time-consuming to play out during a session. For example, what does a typical day in the life of your character look like when they're not adventuring? That might be really boring to play out moment to moment, but really interesting for you to explore interactively with your game master. We can also add thoughtful consideration. Bluebooking allows you to create at a different pace than the immediate demand of live improvisation. It gives you a chance to get your character right, in a way that doesn't always happen in the organic, real-time flow of the table. That means you get a chance to explore your character and their life in different ways and at greater depth. How does your character think? What are their childhood memories? Who's important to them in their personal life and why? This kind of creative work isn't just fun. It can also feed back into how the players portray their characters at the table. The Game Master can also benefit from giving thoughtful consideration to the PC's actions. This makes Bluebooking particularly useful for complex or uncertain situations where the GM isn't sure how or what to prep. Improvising in slow motion lets the GM respond truthfully without compromising quality, depth, or long-term planning. Now, finally, circling back to where we began, Bluebooking allows for opportunistic play. Email and messaging and Discord servers all mean that unlike Alston's players in 1988, you don't have to be in the same room to Bluebook with people. Bluebooking allows you to continue role-playing, to continue developing and experiencing the campaign even when you're not in a session. Now you can do almost anything with this opportunity. Run downtime between adventures, let a PC run a solo side mission, develop backstories, roleplay the tavern scene where the PCs are all planning for the next session. Now my big tip from having experimented with Bluebooking many times over the years is that you generally shouldn't aim to hit a particular milestone in your Bluebooking before the next session. Bluebooking will go slower than you think, and also be heavily dependent on how available the players and the game master can be. Be comfortable either wrapping stuff up at the beginning of the next session or letting the Bluebooking activities run fluidly and perhaps even non-linearly between sessions. For groups who aren't interested in full-blown Bluebooking, a more limited variant that can be very useful is in-character correspondence. I often do this with my Cthulhu-related gaming, for example, as the deeper psychological exploration it encourages feeds nicely into mythos-inspired insanity, and it can also be a lovely way of thinking more deeply about historical milieus. On that note, I also recommend checking out Michael Orox's De Profundis from Cubicle 7. It's a storytelling game in which each player takes on the role of a particular character experiencing some mythos-related oddity, and then corresponds with the other players, developing that idea over time. It's played entirely through the correspondence, offering a unique gaming experience. And I've also found it to be a rich and insightful text that can be a great resource for correspondence-based roleplay in any game. Speaking of rich and insightful texts, I have a new book coming out this fall from Macmillan and Page Street Publishing. It's called So You Want to Be a Game Master, and it offers not only a wealth of tips like those you've come to expect from the Alexandrian, but also a comprehensive, step-by-step guide for becoming a game master and running dungeons, mysteries, raids, heists, urban crawls, hex crawls, and more. Check out the Font of All Knowledge for a link to pre-order the book now. Good gaming. I'm Justin Alexander, and I'll see you at the table.